Guten Yardning! We just finished building this hoop house for our longest raised bed out of 5 easy to get a hold of and inexpensive materials. And along the way, we learned something invaluable for how we're going to build these in the future. Now I want to give credit where credit is due. Our inspiration for this type of hoop house comes from the Gardner Scott YouTube channel. And I'm going to post a link in our description so you can see the original post as well. And in that video, he shows 4 different ways and 4 different materials that you can use to build a hoop house for your raised bed. We chose the PVC route because this isn't something that has to stay around for a long time. This is just a temporary structure for a couple of months, and then we'll pull this off and store it and be able to take it apart easily and put it back together easily. That was key for us. Now, we didn't build it exactly as Gardner Scott suggested. We made a few modifications, but I'm going to show you what goes into this and the mistake that we initially made that had to be corrected right away. The key element in a PVC hoop house for a raised bed is, well, the PVC. And this is where we made our first big mistake. Now, fortunately, it wasn't really a costly mistake because we were able to fix the problem pretty simply. And the problem was caused by the PVC. So this is the initial PVC that I bought. This is 3/4 inch PVC, but it's SDR21. Now, SDR21 is the least expensive PVC. And we got these in 10-foot segments. Well, you can probably tell that this is no longer 10 feet long. And that's because of the issue. I thought that buying this thinner PVC would actually be better because it would probably bend a little bit more easily. Now, PVC isn't meant to bend like this. It's not the purpose of the PVC. And so when we started to bend this SDR21, it cracked and creased right in the middle, right at the top. So we didn't have a hoop so much as we had a TP shape. Well, after 2 of those creased in the middle, we realized they weren't going to work at all. So we took them out, took the rest of them back, and we invested in some Schedule 40. Schedule 40. Now the Schedule 40 is about 150% stronger, and it bends perfectly fine. So you can see we actually have about a 5-foot tall, almost 5-foot tall hoop house here because our bottom area is 3 feet wide. And so we were able to bend without any problem, no crimping, no creasing. And these were about $1 more expensive per. So we bought 8 of these total. So it's about $8 more for the entire bed. But really, the other ones weren't going to last at all. The few that when I put them in and bent that didn't crease right away, you could tell there was so much stress and the walls of the PVC were so thin that they weren't going to last at all. And we already know that PVC is going to break down eventually, and this isn't something that could be permanent. So we actually built it in such a way that we don't plan for it to be permanent, and we can take it in and take it apart easily once it gets a little colder. The 5 materials we needed to build this hoop house were these 8-foot, these are 2-inch by 8-foot furring strips, the PVC, the 3/4 inch by 10-foot PVC, again, Schedule 40 or stronger, nothing less than Schedule 40. This is hoop row netting, this white stuff, this is the hoop row netting, and we'll put a link to this in the description. It's pretty inexpensive, you get about 100 feet by 10 feet. It's a good deal. And rebar, 24-inch rebar, and you can't see it because these are hooked into the rebar, but I'll show you a picture of what it looks like. The thickness of this rebar, we actually just got the cheapest rebar they had at our local hardware store. It was 24 inches long. We didn't go with anything shorter. We definitely didn't need anything longer, but if we'd gone shorter, you know, when I pounded these into the ground, they sunk down to about, 7 inches left up above. So we didn't want to go with anything shorter. And the last thing we needed were these clips. A few different sizes of clips. Now this was needed for us because we wanted a way to hook the netting on to the sides, to the ends of our hoop house. And so this size, the big size, I think these are, I don't know, 2 inches. The big size of these binder clips worked really well to hook on the end. The modifications we made to building this hoop house from the original design suggested by Gardner Scott are that we didn't use the furring strips in the same way that were initially suggested. The initial suggestion is to add strength and stability that you go about halfway up the side on both sides and run furring strips along the length, and then to do the same thing along the top. Well, we did run it along the top, and you can actually see we tied everything in place. And if we get to the right spot here, we also put some little pieces of the furring strip on either side of a couple of the tubes here so that it wouldn't move left to right. So we did keep that design, but what we discovered was if we tried to go halfway, getting into our plants was not going to be easy. So I would say, and I'll just wiggle it back and forth here, there's not very much give, and it's a pretty strong and sturdy build. And the reason it's so strong and sturdy is that rebar down below. Again, it's exposed about 7 inches out of the ground, so the PVC is going over top of that, and it's got lots of stability. The second thing that we did with the furring strips was, and you can actually see there's some gaps here along the bottom, but we used it as a weight to weight down the sides of our netting. So we simply wrapped it up and stapled it a few times, and now it's sitting there as a weight. And that will be useful because when we want to access our garden, we can actually pick up these furring strips, and we'll be picking up the netting as well. We'll be able to lay these up top or put them the whole way over, and we'll have easy access to our entire raised bed. And it works as a nice weight, so nothing gets underneath. And on the back side, these furring strips are screwed into the ground the whole way along the back length in order to keep a firm hold on this netting. If we didn't keep a firm hold on it and there is a strong wind, it might tear. But in this case, I don't think that's anything we're going to have to worry about. So there was one other little hitch that we ran into, and that is that we didn't actually have 100 feet of this netting left over. We had about 25 feet of it, maybe 27 feet of it, and we have a 32-foot raised bed. Well, we had other pieces, other smaller pieces, so we ended up having to overlap a little bit and use some of these smaller binder clips to hold together, but we still got a nice firm connection, and this will help us in our battle against any of the birds or insects that might try to get into our garden as it's growing. Now, don't get me wrong, I love our birds. They have been essential in the fight against the Japanese beetles this year, and they've also added some wonderful ambiance to our videos, and we've been able to experience with our children some of the hatching from the nests, etc. And so we love the birds. We just don't want them taking advantage of our food here as it starts to take off. Looks like we're inside of an animal's rib cage. This is it, 32 feet long. Our total expenditure was about $75, maybe $80. And what we're going to be able to do is detach the netting whenever we're done with this setup. Detach the netting, pull the plastic up off the rebar, because it's, again, only held in place by that rebar. It's not screwed in or anything like that. Pull up each of these PVC pieces, and we'll leave the rebar in the ground likely. It's not really going to do any harm, although we could pull it out easily as well. And then we have this cleared out when we're ready to plant again in the spring. So our fall garden is coming in here. We've just planted. We have a few more things to plant in here, and we're going to have an amazing, hopefully amazing fall harvest. There is so much going on in the garden right now. Whether it's our fall garden coming in, the rest of the planting, we're preparing the new garden space from where our ash tree had to be taken down from the emerald ash borer. Our hoop house is up. We have our Ruth Stout potatoes ready to come out of the ground. Just a lot going on, a ton of new content coming up for you very soon. So please remember to click subscribe and ring the bell. And if you enjoyed this video, leave us a like, give us a comment, and let us know what you're doing in preparation for your fall garden. And always remember, when you're with us, you're good to grow.